Hi, welcome to Tuesday Night Live. Lovely to have your company. Thank you for stopping by. And also hello to everyone who's watching this and listening to it during the week as well. I just was watching the intro and it says special guests, and I actually have a special guest coming up next Tuesday night, none other than Shane Willard himself. Now, he was actually supposed to be in Melbourne. I doubt very much that he'll be coming here. I think he was ministering at another church as well down here, but I will have him on live with me next Tuesday. And then next Wednesday, we have a masterclass with Shane, and I'll give you a little bit more detail about that. But if you go to the website, baysidechurch.com.au, and click on Connect with Church, and under events, you'll find a masterclass with Shane, which of course we were going to be in person for, hoping to be, but that will now be online, and you need to register for that, by the way. We'll probably do that via Zoom, I would think, a masterclass with Shane Willard, which would be really, really good. More details on that to come, and lots of things to talk about tonight. I'll get to that in just a moment. Hi, Kelly. G'day, Ruth. Hi, Rachel. And g'day to Jazz. He says, hope you're keeping well during these lockdowns again. I am, mate. Thank you. I'm just one of those people who's pretty tenacious, and I just keep going. You know, a little bit like the Energizer Bunny. And, you know, I don't like lockdowns and I hate wearing a mask, but the alternatives are not great. And I am very, very grateful to be in Australia, where our governments, state and federal, are looking to minimise and eradicate this dreadful virus wherever we can. I've been chatting on Messenger today with a friend who I've known since we were in Bible college together. He now lives in Cambodia, and he has had COVID and is still trying to get over it. So I'm going to share a little bit of his story a little bit later in our chat tonight. But no, doing well. Christy's good. And we're actually filming something tomorrow for Bayside Church Online. Christy and I are going to speak together this weekend and really give you some good advice, hopefully, on how to manage all of the different people who are buying into conspiracy theories. So I'm going to touch on that tonight very shortly, but then it'll be continued with me and Christy this weekend on Bayside Church Online. So you can stream that live Saturday at 6 p.m, Sunday at 10 a.m. or on demand, and want to give you some really good tips on how you can manage some of the stuff that I would say the vast majority of us are putting up with at the moment, from friends, family members who have kind of gone down the rabbit hole of conspiracies, what that does to you and how to manage that, and also the best way to try and keep friends and family on side. So that's coming up. G'day, Alice. Looking forward to tonight. Me too. Ruth, hello. And Katie says, hi there. Please stop by and pop in a g'day from whatever chat feed or platform you're watching from. And if you've got any questions as we go as well, please do feel free to pop those into the chat feed as well. And I'll do my very best to answer those as we go. If I need to spend a bit of time digging deep and doing some research on it. I'll answer it in the next few weeks. So coming up shortly, I'm going to answer this question. When young people die, do they continue the aging process in heaven, or do they wait until the second coming of Jesus to continue the aging process on paradise earth, or are they stuck as a young spiritual being for all eternity? So I'm going to do my level best to answer that question as we go a little bit later tonight. If we do have time as well, I'm going to get to the questions about the Seventh-day Adventists, but I will have to see how I go with that. I noticed David Flory is saying g'day. G'day, David. He's a wonderful man. He's part of our staff team at Bayside Church, and he's also a leader in his Seventh-day Adventist church. So I've got some feedback from him and also from another member of Bayside, Peter Karaglanis, who has been part of Bayside for years and years and years. You'll have seen him getting around normally with a camera, filming during in-person services, and Pete is a long-standing member of a Seventh-day Adventist church as well. So I've picked their brains and they've given me some really good feedback. But we'll just see how we go. I may not be able to get to that tonight, in which case we'll touch on the questions about food rules and the Sabbath and the Seventh-day Adventist Church next week. I notice lots of comments coming through here. Hi, Jesse says, hi, Pastor Rob, and good evening, everyone. Hey, Bev, Trin B says, hi, Dad. Now, that would be Trinity Buckingham watching on YouTube from her bedroom, just over the way from my office here at home. Hello, sweetheart. You're amazing. G'day, Daryl. Thanks for tuning in. James is saying hi from the greater city of Dandenong. G'day to Lee. Glad you've joined us tonight, mate. Carolyn Elliott says hello, as does Kathy Thomas as well. So thank you for all your lovely comments. Really, really appreciate that. So let's get into question number one tonight. This is what I was hoping to answer this last week, but we just completely ran out of time. So I do want to focus on this. And I'm going to start by reading some questions and comments that I have received in the last few weeks. And I'm noticing an increasing number of these sort of messages coming through to me from people who are just going, help, help. So let me read some of these to you. Hi, Rob. My parents have been taken in by the Christian conspiracy theorists over COVID, including minimizing the severity of it, the ineffectiveness of masks, anti-vax sentiment. They refuse to get the jab, as well as end times biblical rhetoric. They are distrustful about science and mainstream media and only trust information from fellow Christians, particularly leaders who share similar conspiracy theory stuff on the internet. I got to say, I'll just pause there for a moment. It disturbs me greatly that Christian leaders, pastors in particular, who have bought into some of these conspiracy theories. We need to be people who share and spread truth, not fear and error. And I have done my level best to challenge some of the guys that I know. My success rate so far is 0. They live in an Australian state largely unaffected by COVID at the moment, so also removed from the daily impact my family is experiencing. My parents keep sending me Christian conspiracy theory videos via Messenger. And the last time we spoke on the phone, they compared COVID to the flu and totally dismissed the impact this is having on my family. I have tried countering the conspiracies with evidence, but I only end up coming across like a non-believer to them. So I largely ignore their FB links now. However, our last phone conversation, which was totally dismissive and devoid of any concern or empathy, finally broke me. Their obvious lack of love and care in the midst of this has felt so damaging. My question is, how do we navigate a relationship with my family where we are being hurt by their lack of care and empathy, as well as their constant conspiracy theories and disdain over the vaccine? If they were not my family, I couldn't have a close friendship with them for the sake of my own mental health. I hear you. Yet I feel like I am subjecting myself to constant hurt because they are family. I'm not sure what an appropriate Christian response should be. And I really appreciate this person reaching out in this way. This person and the family are members of Bayside Church Online from another state. The thing I want to say first up here, which I think is really, really important, is you are not alone. There are many people, myself included, who are being got at by being bombarded by friends, by family members. None of my family have gone down the rabbit hole, fortunately, but certainly friends who have. And so there are many, many people who are experiencing the stress of this. And yes, it does certainly impact your mental health if you're not very careful. Someone else wrote to me this: my question, what to do when friends trust a small network of people they don't know in videos that are passed on, but they will not accept any articles, research or information from Google, fact checkers or any government or mainstream media because we are being lied to, we are being deceived, we need to wake up, we are not listening, all in inverted commas. The only medical people they will trust are from their 2 or 3 alternative media forums. If it's not from there, they will not accept it or I suspect even read it. And you're spot on. I got this one late last week. Hey Rob, my wife is so consumed with some conspiracy theories. I have to live with listening to the videos every day. It totally consumes every conversation we have. I'm so tired of it all. I'm trying to keep my head above water with remote teaching, but this is taking such a toll. Can you offer any advice, please? And I'll just read one more. These are 4 of several. Okay, it's interesting how it's the fundamentalist evangelicals who are eating up the conspiracy theories, and you're spot on. Often on the back of an end-time worldview theology that says the world is getting worse. I choose not to argue most of the time as well. No point, and I agree. And have a couple of close friends who are medical professionals who I get information from. He then mentions the family member that he's having challenges with at present and goes on to say, I just have to pick what I choose to discuss with him these days. We both agree that Jesus is Lord and that we are called to love him and to love people. And that is wonderful. So that is the first thing I would say here, is try and find some common ground with these people. I have written to people privately on Facebook Messenger rather than, necessarily trying to deal with it in a public forum, especially when they're getting uptight, argumentative. I'll just go and send a private message, say, hey, listen, your friendship to me is too important for us to go down this pathway. So how about we agree to disagree on this? And particularly, I mean, they're Christians, right? So they love Jesus. I love Jesus. So let's find the common ground here and let's make sure we build on that. And let's choose not to talk about all of these other things. Please stop sending me videos, articles, all of this kind of stuff. I get my information from reliable medical sources, people I know personally. And so let's not, try and convince each other, knowing that that's not going to happen. Let's focus on some common ground here. So I think that's really, really important. I put this post on my Facebook page last week. Some of you may have seen this, but just in case you haven't, this is what I put up. It's happening more and more during this pandemic. People send me a video clip or an article with no message. No, hey Rob, I hope you're well. Would you mind letting me know your thoughts on this? No, just a clip with no message and no context. Of course, I know what they intend. They want to say, see, watch this. You'll see how wrong you are about COVID, lockdowns, vaccines, you name it. I usually check out what they send. I know a lot of highly trained medical specialists. Most of them are Christians. Some are part of Bayside Church. They give me the truth from their position of one who has a master's degree or a PhD in immunology or epidemiology or cardiology. I then get back to the person who originally sent me the invariably false information. What happens then? Nothing. No response. No acknowledgement. No, wow, thanks. I really appreciate you taking the time to check this out for me. Nope, just ignored. And then, a few days later, another clip with no message. Repeat. Ad nauseum. Please stop. End of my Facebook message from last week, which got quite a lot of comments and traction from different people who were then reaching out going, I'm glad I'm not the only one that's happening to. It's happening to me as well. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier tonight, Christy and I are going to be speaking about this on Bayside Church online this weekend. So I'm going to cover some material this evening, but the rest of the material we are going to do together, Christy and I. We're filming this tomorrow, and then it will be streamed live on Saturday at 6 p.m, Sunday at 10 a.m, and on demand as well. And it's always on the Bayside Church website and our YouTube channel too. So you can watch that. I encourage you to share it with other people, and I hope that you find tonight and this weekend very, very helpful. The first thing I think is really important here, the second thing really, the first thing is finding common ground with people. The second thing is understanding that conspiracies are a symptom of pandemics, and you probably won't change anyone's mind if they've already gone down the rabbit hole. I have tried, and I've realized, especially through last year, you know what? I think I'm wasting my time here. Now, that doesn't mean I don't respond to people. And I do. I still check things out for people, and I'll send them information back. But it normally just falls on deaf ears. And really, most of the time, I get absolutely no response from them whatsoever. A classic example of this is a guy I have known for a couple of decades at least, maybe longer. He's a great guy. I'm very fond of him, but he has gone right down the rabbit hole of these conspiracies. And he sent me one of these videos last week. And again, no context, no message, no, hey Rob, how you going? I just saw this, what do you reckon? Nah, just the video link. And so I clicked on it and I watched it. It went for about 5 minutes. And it was a guy in a white coat. Now we know that if a person is wearing a white coat, they are medically trained, don't you know? There was no name, there were no credentials whatsoever. This guy in a white coat, standing up in front of a large group of people in America, of course, and he was talking against the Pfizer COVID vaccine. And he was saying that, he's talking about all this different stuff about the way it affects your heart and all of this kind of thing. And the people were cheering on and going, yeah, yeah, yeah. I got to say, it was really convincing. I watched it and I thought, wow, this is fascinating. But then I know someone, a guy at Bayside Church, him and his wife and family have been part of Bayside for many, many years. And he is a cardiologist, so a cardiac specialist in Melbourne. And so I sent him the video and I said, look, if you've got 5 minutes at some point, if you wouldn't mind, have a look at this and tell me what you think. So he did. The same day, he watched it for me and he sent me this message. He said, in short, there's a lot of false information about the science and a few little half-truths that can be very dangerous. From a cardiac perspective, the risk of myocarditis is extremely low, not zero, but low. So I sent the message back to my friend who had sent me the video, and I gave him this response. No response back. I know he's seen the message on Messenger because, it goes from the tick to the little photo. So I know he's seen it. He's probably read it, but he's not sent me anything. No, gee, thanks so much for checking that out. Thanks for, talking to a specialist who would actually know about this. No, nothing at all. So the bottom line, I think, is something that someone actually said in one of their comments to me, and that is distrust. So these people distrust the government. they distrust the media, and they distrust anyone who has a differing opinion to them. So a little bit like Kellyanne Conway. I don't know if you remember Kellyanne Conway. She was the US counselor to the president in the beginning part of 2017, around the inauguration of then President Donald Trump. And she's being interviewed by Chuck Todd on US media during Meet the Press. And she defended White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, who had given a false statement about the attendance numbers of Donald Trump's inauguration as President of the United States. And so Chuck Todd was quizzing her about this, and she goes, no, I wasn't wrong. What Sean was giving were alternative facts. Remember that little phrase? And so alternative facts has become a little bit of a buzz saying ever since. And so people now say, well, you've got your truth and I've got mine. I've got my facts and you've got your facts. But so people that believe these so-called alternative facts about the pandemic will be consuming large amounts of information, and they are 100% sure that they are correct. And so their job now is to try and convert you. The sad thing is that as Christian men and women, we should actually be using our energy, I think, to preach the good news of the gospel and trying to see people won to Jesus Christ. But when someone's gone down the rabbit hole, their passion, their zeal seems to be pointed in a different direction. They have a low regard for the mainstream media. I've heard people refer to the mainstream media as the lamestream media, a derogatory term. I got called the woke Melbourne pastor recently. I looked up woke, by the way, because I always thought it was what I did every morning, but I kind of woke up. But it means someone that's interested or focused on issues of social justice. And I thought, yes, I'm happy to wear that title. So people that believe these alternative facts, first of all, they have a low regard for mainstream media. They have a low regard for politicians, often the police and those in authority. In fact, anyone in authority. And what they do then is that they post all of this stuff, and they post medical information. And I've got to tell you, I will not post any medical information that I haven't got from a reliable medical source. Now, if that is an online source, it will normally be someone I know personally, and I'll get in touch with them either by the phone, or I send them an email or Facebook Messenger, and I ask them questions, and then I get the information straight from them. And so what we find then is these non-medical people posting medical information. They will start doing the various things as mentioned in some of the comments and questions earlier. So they minimize the severity of it. They compare it to, it's just like the flu, which for some people it is. For other people, they're completely non-symptomatic. Others get incredibly sick. Some die, okay? They talk about the ineffectiveness of masks, then that whole anti-vax sentiment that comes through, and they refuse to get the jab. Let me share a couple of studies with you. This is a new study that's been done by French researchers. They ran 2 studies where they assessed the critical thinking skills of 338 undergraduate students. What the researchers found was a strong association between lower critical thinking skills and an increased tendency toward believing conspiracy theories. So I found this really insightful, and I'm not reading this research because I'm trying to demean, criticize, put down anybody. All right. If you're one of those people and you've bought into conspiracy theories, I feel for you, because I think that you've been duped. and believing a lie, okay? But I'm not going to put you down, and I'm not going to criticize you, and I'm not going to think less of you. And if I know you, I don't love you less. But I think this research is fascinating. So a strong association between lower critical thinking skills and an increased tendency toward believing conspiracy theories. Critical thinking skills, what they mean by that is 7 different things. So someone who has critical thinking skills has, first of all, the ability to think systematically. Secondly, the ability to see other perspectives. Thirdly, the ability to change your mind when new evidence arises, as long as it's factual evidence, okay? Fourthly, to identify relevant versus irrelevant information. So that's what I did the other day with my friend who sent me that video, the guy in the white coat talking about the Pfizer. I want to go to someone that I know who is qualified, trained, and who I respect to be able to get my information source. And I realized then that the video clip was irrelevant information because it was just flat out wrong. Number 5 for the critical thinking skills, the ability to identify and discard logical fallacies. And that's a really important one in all of this too, because a lot of these clips, a lot of these articles are very convincing. And until you actually go to a reliable source that can speak into that, you can feel yourself drawn in. You go, oh my goodness, wow, what if this is real? And then you talk to someone that you know who's qualified in that area, and they're able to blow the logical fallacies out of the water. Number 6, someone with critical thinking skills will be aware of biases and avoid them. And then number 7, you've got the ability to look beyond the obvious. As I say, when you watch some of these videos, they can be very convincing, but you have the ability to look beyond the obvious and go and get your facts straight. So critical thinking skills can be taught and learned, which is wonderful. So if I'm speaking to you right now, then maybe you need to look for a way that you can learn critical thinking skills. And maybe I'll bring someone on Tuesday night live in the next few weeks who could actually teach into that. The research has also found a link between those with a conspiracy mentality and a need for uniqueness. So they need to feel special. And this is a way that they can feel special. Maybe they have feelings of inferiority. Maybe they have an inflated sort of pride. And suddenly they've got all this information which makes them feel unique, feel special. And they can't wait to share that information with you. Just picking up a comment from one of the people that messaged me in the last few days who said it's interesting how it's the fundamentalist evangelicals who are eating up conspiracy theories. And it is interesting, almost to a person. The people I know who have gone down this track, they would be fundamentalist, they would lean right, they're conservative, and they're evangelical / Pentecostal. And I think there's 2 particular reasons for this. There's probably more, but I'm going to touch on 2 right now. First of all, the need for an enemy. When I gave my life to Jesus in the late 70s, I got saved because I felt like, my goodness, all of history had been waiting for Rob Buckingham to give his life to Jesus, and now Jesus can come back because Jesus was about to return, and there was an enemy. There was the one world government, there was the Antichrist, there was all this, the false prophet from the book of Revelation, all this stuff. Satan's alive and well on planet Earth. And so there was an enemy that needed to be fought. The thing is that nothing happened out of all of the predictions that were made when I first gave my life to Jesus in the late 70s. All those things were supposed to come true in the 80s. Nothing happened. And so more predictions happened. In the 80s and 90s, there was a thing called the Satanic Panic, which is fascinating, by the way. If you like to listen to podcasts, there's a podcast called Cults, C-U-L-T-S, Cults, and they've got 4, Yeah, 4 episodes called The Satanic Panic. And it is absolutely fascinating. So it's stuff that happened in the 80s and 90s, and I think maybe even the early 2000s, that really reflects some of the stuff that's going on today, but it was all based on error. And we can be in 2021 looking back now and we go, oh my goodness, look at what they believed. They were all wrong, but it impacted majorly on people in those days. But I'm seeing exactly the same thing happening now. History repeating itself. So have a listen to those 4 episodes from the Cults podcast, The Satanic Panic. I am reading an interesting book at the moment. It's a fascinating book. It's called Jesus and John Wayne. And the subtitle is How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation. It's written by a woman called Kristen Dumez. And it's an absolute page turner. I'm about halfway through. I'm reading it on my Kindle. I'm about halfway through at the moment. And I'm looking forward to, when I go to bed tonight, I'll read a few more chapters. But she basically goes through evangelical history over the last several decades, pointing out how conservative evangelicals, particularly white evangelicals, have to always have an enemy. So back in the 60s and 70s, it was the Cuba Missile Crisis, it was communism, and then communism fell in a heap. The Soviet Union fell in a heap and so on. And so they have to have another enemy. And so I encourage you to read that book, Jesus and John Wayne, it's called, by Kristen, Kristin, Dumez. That's Dumez. So conservative white evangelicals particularly always have to have an enemy, perceived or real. Invariably, it's not a real enemy. And so at the moment, for a lot of conservative evangelicals, the government is the enemy. COVID is a plandemic. It's all been orchestrated to bring about a one world government for the Antichrist and a cashless society and all of this kind of stuff. And it isn't, okay? It's not. It's something that's happened numerous times in human history. We will get to the other side of it, you see, and life will return to some kind of normal, but ultimately it'll be better than it was before, because that has happened at every pandemic, but we have to get through. So conservative, particularly white conservative evangelicals, have to have an enemy. And the second thing is they have a futurist view of the book of Revelation. So they're always talking about the end times. And the book of Revelation is all about to happen. It was about to happen in the 70s. But if you read through history, it was about to happen in the 40s, and it was also about to happen 100 years ago, and also was about to happen in the year 1000, and so on and so forth, okay? The book of Revelation is Hebrew apocalyptic writing, very popular genre in about 200 years before Jesus and about 200 years after Jesus. And it's likely symbolic, allegorical language that was used to describe some of the things that were happening around the time of Nero and Domitian in the latter part of the 1st century, when John was alive and on the Isle of Patmos and writing this. And he wrote in the book of Revelation, he said, I'm telling you the things that must soon come to pass, okay? Not in 2,000 years' time, but the things that were soon to come to pass. And of course, those things did happen in John's lifetime. The Bible never mentions the word end times or the phrase end times. It does talk about the last days, and it always talks about the last days with regard to the first coming of Jesus. So I'll just have a look at a couple of scriptures here. If you have a look at Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 2, and the author is saying here, in these last days. So when were the last days? Well, they were in the 1st century. The last days, he has spoken to us by his Son. He's talking about God here. So these last days, the last days began when Jesus started his ministry. God appointed his Son heir of all things, and through whom also he made the universe. That's Hebrews chapter 1, verse 2. We see Peter saying something similar on the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2 and verse 17. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your young men will see visions, your old men will dream dreams. So the last days they already began, and the Bible doesn't talk about the end times. So what we are waiting for, Bible prophecy-wise, is the second coming of Jesus. And until that time, the world actually will get better, which is what is happening largely. And yes, I know the world right now is particularly chaotic. But if you read back through your history over the last 2,000 years since Jesus, the world has become better and better and better. We're on a trajectory of improvement, and the world will continue down that track until the second coming of Jesus Christ, which is, I find, very, very encouraging. So conservative evangelicals see the pages of the Bible coming alive in their newspaper every day. It's exciting. I was excited by it in the 70s, but people have been doing this for years and they have been wrong every time. So let me wrap this up because I've got a whole lot more to say about this on the weekend with Christy. If this were my parents, so going back to the first question that I asked, the person whose parents have gone down the rabbit hole and they're always talking about conspiracy theories, I'd be very clear if they were my parents, I'd be very clear either on a phone call, but I think I would write a letter or an email. And so I've done that. I have written as if this was my parents. And this is the sort of thing I would write. Let me read this to you. Dear Mum and Dad, you know that I love you very much. In phone calls since the pandemic began, it's obvious that you and I see current events through very different eyes. I believe that global pandemics are just something that happen in the world from time to time. In history, millions of people have died from various pandemics, and millions have died so far in this pandemic. Thanks to modern science and technology, vaccines have been developed that can reduce the risk and severity of COVID-19. We plan to get vaccinated as soon as we can. In the meantime, we don't want to allow our differing opinions on this to get in the way of our relationship. You are dearly loved and treasured by us all, and we'd hate to fall out over anything. In time, I'm sure we'll see the right and wrong of what we're all living through right now. For us here, life is tough going, but we're tough people and we'll come through this stronger than ever. The video clips and articles you send us are not helpful. I'm asking kindly, please don't send any more. We love you and we love Jesus. From now on, when we talk on the phone, can we please steer clear of discussing COVID-19, the pandemic, vaccines, and Bible prophecy? There are plenty of other things we can chat about. Much love, and then sign it off. If you would like me to send you a copy of that, I'd be more than happy to do that on Messenger. You can just PM me and I'll send that letter to you. I hope that is helpful. 3 things just to wrap up. I would say very simply, for people that have gone down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, 3 things. Number 1, pray for them. Secondly, love them. And thirdly, ask questions. So pray, first of all. We need to surround those involved in false information with prayer. Don't argue with them. Pray for them. Secondly, engage. Engage with the person lovingly. Fact-checking is not a solution for them. Remember, they don't trust the media. Fact-checkers are seen as the police of our online world in this new world order. The fact-checking approach actually makes the conspiracist more entrenched in their beliefs. It is imperative we love people no matter how wacky they sound, and certainly don't ridicule and don't laugh at them. And the third thing I say there is ask questions. Just question, okay? Ask polite questions. I've asked this sort of thing. Can you share some more about how every government can introduce COVID into every country in the world? I struggle with seeing how any government could organize anything that big. Could you help me with that, please? I asked someone recently, they were talking about the lockdowns and being in a police state, which, when you look at what's happening in Afghanistan at the moment, if you're anything like me, my heart is absolutely breaking for the people of Afghanistan. And when I hear people in Australia, I heard Tom Elliott on 3AW today talking about Victoria being a police state. I thought, seriously, catch yourself on. We are so not in a police state. But, I've heard different things like this. So ask good questions. And, people that say that the vaccine contains a microchip that will connect us all to 5G, ask the question. That's fascinating. How is it that they're able to fit the microchip into that tiny little syringe? And also, how is it that every doctor, nurse, and medical professional all around the world seems to have bought into the conspiracy of knowing that there is a microchip in here that they're about to inject? So just ask good questions. So I hope that helps. To be continued this weekend on Bayside Church Online. I see that I've been getting some comments here, so let me go back to where we left off. Oh my goodness, lots of people saying g'day. So let me go back to you here. Shane is saying hi from the Philippines. Katie says, yes, the Seventh-day Adventists do Road to Bethlehem, which is so, so beautiful. Absolutely is. And I'll touch more on, I'm not going to be able to get to the Seventh-day Adventist questions tonight, but suffice to say that I have some very dear friends in the SDA church, and they love Jesus passionately, and I make a choice personally of never criticizing another Christian denomination. Hi to Nika, to Melanie, g'day, to Sharon, to Ruth. Sharon says here, I'd like to hear what your belief is around how old we might be in heaven. Yes, I'll get to that in just a moment, Sharon. Okay. David Flory, one of my SDA friends, says, I've had to have the talk with certain in-laws about 5G and COVID. They started on the 5G COVID conspiracy, and I had to stop them in their tracks and set them straight on 5G. And if anyone's going to do that, David Flory, you tech genius, you would be able to do that. Susan says, this is happening to me. One friend is sending me websites, but no hi or anything, so I ended up getting very angry. I understand your frustration, Susan. Try and remain calm if you can. When it happens, if you're feeling the temperature rising a little bit and your blood boiling, best not to respond. This is something I have learned over the years, is to shut your computer down and go for a walk until you're calm. Maybe spend a bit of time in prayer. The other thing that I find is very, very helpful is actually to write the message that you want to send back, but don't do it on Messenger. And if you do it, if you're writing an email, don't put their address in the to bit, okay? Because not speaking from experience or anything, but yes, on one occasion I did write the angry email and then push the send button by mistake. And I'm like, it's too late now, Excuse me. I shouldn't have made that noise. So write the angry email and then put it in the drafts folder and leave it for a day. And then go back and read it the next day. And you'll either delete it or you'll alter it a lot and then send it. But anger doesn't normally work. G'day to Conrad, Pastor Conrad and Ruth up in Marysville. Jazz says here, and I would agree with this, I think a lot of Australian Christians are influenced by Trumpism and only listen to extreme right-wing media. I would try to bring them to ground, try to find something that we agree on. Absolutely, Jazz. We find some common ground there. I've been encouraged to see Sky News being challenged. I think they were taken off YouTube for a week. And I know that they were deleting quite a few of their clips last Friday off YouTube from their various commentators because the information is flat out wrong. So, I mean, I don't know a lot of these guys. I've met Steve Price a few times, and I like Steve. But I've not met Alan Jones or Rowan Dean or any of those guys. But we got to remember, okay, they're media people. I think Rowan Dean's background is marketing. So they're not medical experts, So to watch Alan Jones and Craig Kelly rabbiting on about medical statistics, and they didn't even know how to read the statistics. They're absolutely flat out wrong. And Sky News had to take the thing down and then put up an apology. If you ever watch Media Watch on the ABC a couple of weeks ago, they did a whole expose on Sky News, which was really, really good. Rachel said, I would listen to the PhDs as well. They have earned it with hard work. They certainly have, Rachel. Katie says, in our employee forum today, we heard from an infectious disease doctor in North Carolina. The Delta cases have risen, but all of his patients in ICU are unvaccinated. And that's spot on. I mean, we may get a few people that are vaccinated in hospital and ICU, but it will be predominantly the unvaccinated, because the vaccines are very, very good at preventing death and hospitalization. So, get vaccinated as soon as you can. I've had my first AZ jab and I'm waiting for my second one in September, which will be good. So that's lovely, Katie. I love the fact that you're getting your information straight from good sources. Jesse, who is from the good old USA, says, we love God, guns, and alternative facts. Yes, and yep, I have friends just like that in the States, and we have had to agree not to say anything to each other on this subject. Pete calls me Pastor Woke. Thank you so much. Minnie says, I tried to stay out of rabbit holes. Absolutely. Michael says, what should we do from a Christian perspective about getting the vaccine? I'm just not sure. I think the most important thing, Michael, is go and have a chat with your GP. And I might actually address this a little bit next week as well. And I wrote a blog earlier this year, I think it was. You'll find it on the Bayside Church website. If you type into your search engine Bayside Church blog vaccines, it should bring up my blog on vaccines, which I wrote with a lot of input and guidance from a friend of mine who has her master's degree in immunology, and she majored in vaccines. And so I got it straight from a very good source. Damien, hi to you, mate. Amazing, Rob. Thanks for sharing this. Such a challenge with respected pastors completely down the rabbit hole. Yes, it is. Okay, what else have we got here? Lots of great comments, questions. Critical thinking is critically important. Hi, Janice. Kathy says, gotta laugh. Just had a friend PM me with no introductory message, just a forwarded link and a video. You do have to laugh, don't you? Danny says, how refreshing, Rob, to hear some common sense and respectful thinking in love. Well done. Thank you so much for that, Danny. Hi, Sharon. Peter, another one of my SDA friends. That uniqueness is coupled with being seen to know first and feeling they know more. That's very, very true. Pastor Richard Warner, God bless you. Thanks so much, mate. Lovely to hear from you. Sharon says, I know quite a few people who are not highly educated, but feel they can join the debates in conspiracy theories, etc. Drives me mad. I've seen them join with conspiracy theories over countless issues. Yes, and that's what will happen, of course, once their mind is in that way of thinking. Once COVID is over and done with, there'll be another enemy. There'll be another conspiracy, because conservative white evangelicalism always needs an enemy to thrive. That's a really important thing. Enemies foster alliances quicker than friendship. What a tragic truth. What an absolute tragic truth. Matt, good on you, mate. Will I bet better? Will you? Oh, I think you mean will I get better 5G phone reception if I get the jab? I don't know. I'll let you know. I'm just wondering if I have to have an aerial up, and how the aerial has to go when I get my 5G. Vincent says, thanks for that tonight. And a couple of people here whose vaccines are done and dusted. Well done to you. All right, let's get to my second question tonight. We've got 10 minutes to get into this. Actually, just before I do that, I want to read this message to you. I got this today from a friend of mine. He and I were in Bible college together in the mid-80s. He now lives in Cambodia. And he said this: I got COVID about 8 weeks ago. It's been a nightmare. I couldn't hardly breathe for 5 days. And there are no ventilators in the whole town where he lives in Cambodia. I was very sick for 6 weeks, along with about 6,000 people in a town of 30,000. The Delta variant is raging through the whole town. I'm still getting over it. I lost the feeling in my left foot at the front, so it feels like I will fall over. And I have many other symptoms as well. And just before I came on air tonight, I got this message, follow-up message from him. He said, this is how I got it. I was driving back along the river after buying some bread. A young guy was laying across the road unconscious next to his motorbike. As I pulled up, he wasn't blinking and breathing and suddenly had like a fit. I thought he might have been epileptic and rolled him over into the recovery position. Then I looked up the road to see if anyone was coming who may speak English. A cafe guy came past, and as I waved him down, the guy on the ground stood up next to me. I was next to him for a second, and I moved back. Lo and behold, he had a COVID symptom called immobility. So just fallen over on the road, immobile. 5 days later, I felt like I was sucking air through a straw and flat on my back. And as I say, it's taken him 8 weeks and he still is not over it. He has felt very sick for 6 and he still has all of these other symptoms. And I have heard that numerous times from people I know personally. One very dear friend of ours died last November from COVID. He was fit, 50 years old, no underlying underlying health conditions whatsoever. And yet this thing just took him out. His wife had it and she recovered. And I asked her what it was like. And she said she was lying in bed and it felt like every bone in her body was being broken. And then another friend of mine who's a pastor, he said he felt like he was being held underwater for 2 weeks. This is a horrendous virus. We need to realize it is real. And praise God for our medical professionals who, through their God-given creativity, have come up with vaccines based on research that has been done for the last 2 decades. And they're not experimental vaccines. And so I would encourage you to have a chat with your GP. And if he or she gives you the green light, go ahead and get the jab. Very, very important. Talking of which, by the way, if you live in the Bayside area of Melbourne, if you're in the city of Bayside, the city of Glen Eira, or the city of Port Phillip, a news flash came out late this afternoon that if you feel unwell with any symptoms at all, please go and get tested immediately because COVID is happening around our area. There's a cluster happening around St Kilda at the moment. So the final question for tonight, I know this one isn't covered by scripture, but was wondering your personal opinion. When young people die, do they continue the aging process in heaven? Or do they wait until the second coming of Jesus to continue the aging process on paradise earth? Or are they stuck as a young spiritual being for eternity? That is a great question. And I'm going to take you to a scripture in a moment. If you do have a Bible or a Bible app nearby, if you want to just find 1 Corinthians 15, and we're going to read this from verse 35 in a few minutes. My personal opinion on this question is being asked here. So I'm going to give you my personal opinion. I have no Bible to back this up at all, but my personal opinion is that people will be an ideal age for eternity. And I think that probably means somewhere between 25 and 30. That's just what my personal opinion is. Some people with that opinion, by the way, based that on some verses from 1 John chapter 3 and verse 2 that says, "Dear friends, now we are the children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known. But we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is." And they say there, well, when he appears, we're going to be like Jesus. And Jesus was 33 when he died, so we're all going to be 33. I actually don't think that's what John's getting at in 1 John chapter 3, verse 2. But I think probably around that age, 25, 30, early 30s maybe. Three questions I'll ask to answer this question. Number one, what age was Adam when God created him? So when God made the first human out of dust and breathed into him, Adam became a living soul, a living being. And God didn't create a baby and stick the baby under a tree and then hope for the best. He created an adult. And so I kind of think that in eternity, we will be whatever age Adam was when he was created. So on day one, of course, he was 1 day old, but he could have also been, say, 25. And I imagine that God made him pretty spectacular as well, and Eve as well. Because after all, when Adam looked at Eve, he went, "Whoa, man," like that. And that's why she was called woman. Whoa, man. What age would you like to be is the second question that I will ask there. What age? When I think back, I love being the age I am now. But if I could choose to be any age, I'd love to go back to my 20s. I'd hate to go back to my teens. That'd be awful. Pimples again, and all the hormones and all this different stuff going on. You're trying to work out who you are and you're uncomfortable in your skin and all that kind of stuff. And all that sort of starts settling down through your 20s and 30s. And then the third question is, will we actually have an age in eternity? Because there's no time in eternity. So if there's no time, then there's no age. Just a thought. Matthew 22 and verse 30 is an interesting scripture as well. It says, "At the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven." So interesting. We'll be like angels. Now, that doesn't mean we're all going to have wings, and it doesn't mean we're all going to be sitting around on clouds with harps. And I'm so glad, because that doesn't sound like heaven to me. You know, getting up in the morning going, "Oh, what are you going to do today?" "Oh, nice cloud over there, just going to play my harp for a day, you know, and then have some food, angel food cakes, whatever the case might be, not deviled eggs, and then play your harp again." That's going to be boring. So we're going to be like the angels, but not like that, which I think is really, really encouraging. And then the most solid insight into, and I've just opened my emails for whatever reason, the most solid insight into this from Scripture is what I just asked you to turn to in 1 Corinthians 15. And we're going to pick it up at verse 35 and read to the end of the chapter. This is the most solid insight into the resurrection body. And remember, resurrection always has to do with the body, okay? And so when Jesus was resurrected, it was his body that was resurrected. At the end of the age, our bodies will be resurrected, reunited with the human spirit, and live forever in the presence of God. So this is Paul's take on the resurrection of the body. 1 Corinthians 15, and we'll pick it up at verse 35. "But someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body will they come? How foolish," says Paul. You wouldn't want to ask Paul a question, would you? "What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just a seed, perhaps of wheat or of something else. But God gives it a body as he determined, and to each kind of seed he gives its own body. Not all flesh is the same. People have one kind of flesh, animals have another, birds have another, and fish another. There are also heavenly bodies and there are earthly bodies. By heavenly bodies, he's not talking about people that go to the gym, by the way. He's talking about the sun, moon, and stars, and then he's talking about the planets. But the splendor of the heavenly bodies, the glory or that which emanates from them, is one kind, and the splendor of the earthly bodies is another. The sun has one kind of splendor, the moon another, the stars another. The stars differ from star in splendor. So will it be with the resurrection of the dead. The body that is sown is perishable. So our bodies, when they die, they perish, right? When we're raised, the body that is raised is going to be imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. So right now, our bodies get weak. Sometimes we get sick. We get tired. People get infected with a virus. All sorts of stuff happens. That won't happen after the resurrection. When our bodies are resurrected, they'll be resurrected in power, not in weakness. It is sown a natural body, but it is raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. So it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam, talking about Jesus, was a life-giving spirit. The spiritual did not come first, but the natural, and after that, the spiritual. The first man was of the dust of the earth. That's Adam, right? The second man, Jesus, is of heaven. As was the earthly man, so are those of the earth. So right now, we are like Adam. We're dust. One day our body's going to go back to dust. But as is the heavenly man, so also are those who are of heaven. And just as we have borne the image of Adam, the earthly man, so we shall bear the image of the heavenly man, Jesus. I declare to you, brothers and sisters, that flesh and blood, our bodies right now, cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. Listen, I tell you a mystery. We will not all sleep, but we will all be changed in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For the perishable must clothe itself with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality. When the perishable has been clothed with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality, then the saying that is written will come true. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, he gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, and this is, I love the therefore. Whenever there's a therefore, you've always got to ask yourself, what's it there for, right? It's therefore to give us how we should live in the light of what we've just read. So in the light of this fact that one day this mortal body is going to take on immortality, this natural body is going to become supernatural body. In the light of that, he says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. How should I live now? Stand firm. Let nothing move you. Pandemics, conspiracies, not going to let it move me. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. How good is that? I hope you're encouraged by those verses from 1 Corinthians, and maybe just go back and read those through a few more times and meditate. Paul gets quite wordy in that section, but just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful truth. I'll finish off with a few comments, and oh my goodness, lots and lots of comments here. Yeah, Ross, I couldn't agree with you more. Segmentation of Christians based on political beliefs isn't unifying for God's kingdom. Absolutely spot on, mate, and it really does my head in. We should be apolitical. And you know, I mean, we all have political leanings. I do, and you know, I vote. I often vote in a different way. Actually, I'm probably a bit of a swing voter, if I was to be very honest with you. But I don't think that our fellowship in Jesus Christ should become political. And I think it's absolutely tragic when our faith becomes hijacked by a political party. Graham says, my cousin in the UK had long COVID for 12 months, has only just recovered, possibly as a result of completing her vaccinations. Hi, Sean. Melanie says, my cousin in England has a neighbour who had COVID last year. She was okay. She's in her 50s just recently. She's been unwell and has trouble breathing. She's been diagnosed with long COVID and will no longer be able to work. See, these are the stories. These are tragic stories, but this is what we need to hear. We really, really need to hear those things. Hi, Carrie. G'day, Deborah. Thanks, Damien. I'm glad you like my dad jokes. Always a dad joke, says Alison. Hi, Philip. Great question, Philip. I'll touch on this on another Tuesday night. But what about Christians and cremation? Happy to answer that in the next few weeks. Sharon says, so Rob, do you believe the people who pass are still connected to us through their spirit? No, I don't think they're connected to us now. I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. But hey, the Bible actually gives very little insight or revelation on that. So I won't say a hard and fast no to that. I think that's pretty well it. Thanks for all the nice comments there, folks. We need to finish up. My goodness, look at the time. This weekend, Christy and I are going to be speaking about For Heaven's Sake, Help Us, and some more really, really good input for you on that topic. Next Tuesday night, Shane Willard is going to be with me. And tomorrow week, Wednesday night of next week, a masterclass online. Go onto the Bayside Church website under events and register for that. He's going to be doing an hour and a half on spiritual practices and emotional health. It's going to be wonderful with Shane Willard next Tuesday night, next Wednesday night. I'll see you then. Have a wonderful week.